Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Good afternoon, Joey Klein again with an episode of Tech Talk. We've got three great Atlanta technology companies that we're going to talk to today, and we're going to get right into it. So first we've got John Peake, who's the CEO of both Candid Partners and ReactorWorks.
Thanks for having me, Joey.
Absolutely. Next up, we're going to talk to Aleks Cardwell, who's product marketing at Smarp.
Hey, Joey. Excited to be here.
And finally, Marshall Mosher, CEO of Vesti.
What's up, guys? Great to be here.
Excellent. Okay, so as we always do, we're going to go alphabetical by company. So we're going to start off with John first. So, John, you have the distinction of being the CEO of two companies.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Correct. So we're going to talk about kind of how that developed. I think the logical place to start is to discuss the general industry you're in, or your specialty at least, which is cloud computing.
Yes, that's correct.
So this is, I'm sure at this point that most people, even walking through an airport, see some sort of ad for some sort of cloud computing platform. And they get some, they're marketed to for cloud storage. And probably a third of us, being generous, actually know what any of this means. So give the layperson listening to this podcast a 101 course in what cloud computing is. Okay,
I'll do my best here. So, I should say that this is the year that cloud has gone mainstream, so that's why you're now seeing all that stuff. But, cloud is essentially an organization taking all of their infrastructure and putting it up into the cloud, which a cloud essentially is their data centers that are managed by cloud platform providers, of which there really are three. That's AWS, Google Cloud Platform, and Azure by Microsoft. And the idea is that enterprises don't need to manage their infrastructure anymore. There's a certain level of automation and elasticity and infinite resources with these providers, so that you don't need to worry about managing your data center and expanding upon it. And the other important point about cloud is cloud also implies that you can now provision infrastructure by writing software code. And so that's a very key distinction, is that wasn't really possible up until these cloud providers kind of came into business.
Okay, but if 2019 is the year the cloud has gone, quote unquote, mainstream, that means that Candid Partners has been in this universe for far longer. Mm-hmm. So how did this happen, and how were you so far ahead of the curve?
It was really kind of born out of desperation. We started using cloud because we worked one of our anchor client here in Atlanta. They're a consumer products company, and they did a lot of marketing campaigns. And those marketing campaigns would have tremendous spikes, often tied to like a television ad or some sort of campaign. And you would need a massively elastic infrastructure to be able to scale to support campaigns like that. And frankly, we had a couple initiatives that did not go well. And when a company like this, and it's very much a name brand, it's a top 10 brand company that everyone here would recognize. But they had some campaigns that they spent millions of dollars in advertising, and the campaigns in a couple of cases did not go so well because the infrastructure could not handle the capacity. And that was the trigger that made us say, how can we deal with this problem? And so that's when we looked at AWS, because they have massive infrastructure to support all their shopping online, and they've converted that into cloud. And we're like, all right, we're going to take advantage of some of that capacity.
Okay, so this is how you were born, and now this is what you do as a full-time job. Born out of basically an unintended consequence of this consulting gig that you were on. Okay, mm-hmm. So you do this for Fortune 500, for sizable companies. One would think that organizations like that would not have to bring in a consultant for this, right? One would think that they would be able to have this sort of expertise within their own technology departments. Why is that not the case?
No, that's completely not the case. It's new. It's emerging. It's emerging technology, and it's very highly specialized. So you actually do, and frankly, like, we learned a lot, like, on that first project. I'm not going to lie. So that was about 7 years ago. And that's where we really picked up our cloud skills. And we've continued to hone and evolve those skills. But any company, and this is the interesting thing I'm seeing about cloud, I'm actually seeing an increased number of cloud project and program failures now. And it's because cloud has not now gone mainstream, and companies are trying to use it really at scale. and there's a dearth of really highly specialized skills to be able to help them. And so it's making matters worse at this point.
How do you identify a potential client that is cognizant enough that they need help? Right, because I would imagine that there's a lot of groups that might come to you sort of after they've already failed. So how do you get in with someone before that happens?
I'm not going to lie, that's uncommon. So the large enterprises, Fortune 500, they've typically experimented and realized that the cloud is viable, and then they're trying to go at scale. So they're trying to do a program or even an enterprise level initiative, and a lot of times they have false starts. I mean, I would say anecdotally, about 60% of cloud, like enterprise level cloud initiatives, fail. That's what I'm seeing right now, and again, that's an increasing number. And what I am seeing is I'm seeing mid-sized companies that are a little more progressive, a little more tech savvy. I'm seeing some of those enterprises go, oh, we need to bring somebody in right away. So we have a few $2 to $3 billion clients, and that's mid-sized for us. And those guys are coming straight to us and saying, we're not going to embark on this without cloud specialization. And so, but I would say the big companies, there's a bit of a bravado, and they can solve all their problems, and they're the ones that are having a lot of experience and a lot of pain.
Yep. But of course, the first situation you mentioned, which they come to you first, they've already been a client, right? They recognize your value.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it's unfortunately, it sounds like a bit of a chicken and the egg issue. Okay. So when we introduced you, we also mentioned another company of which you are CEO. So are you just the hardest working guy in this room? Tell me a little bit more about ReactorWorks.
I delegate heavily, I assure you.
Okay.
No, so ReactorWorks is a company, and really it's a software company, and the product is what we're calling it's essentially a DevOps firewall. And I'll try to define that as best as I can. So, and especially in light of the recent Capital One breach, what we do is we have a product that you can install, and it essentially provides a firewall for your DevOps teams that are moving infrastructure to cloud that prevents them from doing anything insecure and unsafe, and enforces enterprise-level standards so that they're not doing anything out of the norm or the standard that the company wants. And this is essential, and this is an interesting thing, is like no enterprise, I feel like, very few companies realize they actually need this functionality. So there's a lot of companies out there that are bringing an army of consultants, and they're trying to move as much stuff to cloud as possible. But you know what? Incredibly unsafe. If you don't have what is literally a firewall, so you think about a network firewall, nothing malicious can get in, but nothing malicious can get out either. And it's the same concept. You do not want anyone within your entire enterprise deploying, provisioning stuff in the cloud, moving applications to the cloud that can do something unsafe. You literally should be able to completely block that. And there's a level of automation that the cloud now provides that allows you that. But I don't think companies out there realize that there's now this capability. And it's very nascent industry, but you're going to start seeing software products provide more of this capability going forward.
And so I'm assuming that this technology was born of course, experiences that you at Candid Partners had while on consulting gigs.
Absolutely. It's a spin out. And it's a spin out of the anchor client that we had. And look, hats off to them. Fortune 100 company here in Atlanta, they have had no problems. They moved. We took them from 0% to 100% in cloud in the course of 6 years. They have had no security breaches. Wow. The worst they've had is a DDoS attack, which they shut off in about an hour. And that's remarkable for a company in the order of close to, I think they're over $100 billion market cap.
Well, and it's more incredible when we have just become so accustomed to, it's incredible to me now that I think we live in a world where we expect our data to not be safe. Right? That is just the cost. If anyone, and I understand that this has to do with, customer data as well as a company's own data, but we live in a world right now where it's just, we know that if we're going to take advantage of, what e-commerce, mobile computing, anything where we're putting our information out there, that there's a likelihood that might get stolen. But I'm not sure if we're all making the calculation of it's worth it, so to speak, but by doing so, we decide, okay, it's worth it. I'd rather have the convenience.
Yeah, and honestly, it's unavoidable at this point. Unless there's legislation that prevents it, the companies are going to do this. I mean, from my standpoint, cloud is far more secure than on-prem. I mean, fundamentally, you can limit your blast radius by putting things in cloud. It's just the way things are architected. And so if there is a breach, it could be localized far better than the way companies have traditionally put data in the cloud. And the other important thing is that we've done analysis, and I would say 90% of the major breaches you've seen over the past couple of years are on-prem. So you think of Equifax versus Cap One.
Yeah.
Equifax is all on-prem, and there's far more of those than kind of the Cap One experience.
Interesting. I imagine that's a pretty good case study for you guys to get out there with.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think people realize it, so we do have to we have to educate people on that.
So one of the things that I find interesting to discuss on the show, especially with entrepreneurs, is the culture that they have created. If you go on Glassdoor for Candid Partners, you guys have a 4.7 out of 5. And that's not just because you only have, one or two people who have gone on there to comment. You have a sizable number of folks who've gone out there to talk, really good things about Candid Partners. So why do people like working there so much? And now that you are establishing a new company within, how do you transfer that culture to this new organization?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So we've been told that we have the strongest culture that people have seen. I've had some very senior executives say that, so hopefully that's a good thing. But you can see it in our name, and we are brutally transparent and honest with people, and with our clients in particular, but also with our employees. And so we're a company where people that want to come and really bang out the language or bang out the delivery and on consulting, and they've been in the industry for a long time, so they don't want to be micromanaged. And, and that's very much, we're very much known as a delivery focused company. So, one of our taglines is actions speak louder than advice. And so you got a lot of consulting companies out there that just want to hand you a PowerPoint deck. We deliver on a fixed price. We deliver very sophisticated software systems. That's what we do. And people love that. We've really developed a reputation for that. And also with our clients, we're really owned by two. It's me and my business partner own the company, so we're not beholden to anyone. We don't have investors. We're beholden to our clients and our employees. Mm-hmm. And so there's not a lot of other people that are demanding that we deliver a certain amount of revenue or profit, and that enables us to walk away from bad businesses. It enables us to tell our clients the truth, even if there could potentially be some sort of reprisal because they don't want to hear some of the things we have to say. But you know what? That's important to me. And that's why we built this company. It's like, I want to be as honest as possible with our clients. We're not the guys that you hire to keep their heads ducked down below the gunfire when things get ugly in an enterprise. And inevitably, with these kind of initiatives, you always have very painful political situations. And so we're the guys you bring in that are going to have those difficult discussions and broker those difficult discussions. And so, in talking about how Matter works, it was a carve out. So that culture, and both companies are located on the same floor, so they're sister companies, and they're complementary. They each sell the other's product. Mm-hmm. So I think that culture is just permeated both. I think just by virtue of the fact that it's a carve out, that culture has continued, and the managing partners. That this is you've met me. We've sat down and had a long conversation. So I'm pretty pointed and forthcoming about my opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think that is, no matter what business you're in, that honesty and candor, it might turn some people off, but frankly, those are people that you probably don't want to be doing business with anyway. It generally just makes the world run a little bit easier when you can get straight to the point. And, look, the best friends that you have in the world are the ones who are honest with you. And I think that goes the same for a client partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a very specific culture fit, and not everyone. Frankly, a lot of people aren't a great fit. Like, my expectation is people stand up and put themselves forth and speak honestly and openly with client and be proactive. Mm-hmm. So, and that takes a certain kind of person.
Well, but I think it also probably does a lot to boost morale inside, because I think what a lot of people experience are that they are beholden to someone else's view, beholden to someone else's schedule, and don't really have a voice of their own. I think it can be very freeing to have that autonomy to speak your mind, even if you're not the head of the company.
Well, they feel empowered to say what needs to be said, and I've got their back. Yeah. The management has their back, and that's absolutely true. And it's very liberating for that kind of person. It's very liberating, and we've gotten at this point a lot of cachet in the Atlanta area. So we're the place you can go and bang out your work and not have to deal with too much politics. You can be honest about where things stand, and some very, very technically savvy people are really now kind of gravitating toward towards our company, which is great.
Well, so let's talk about Atlanta. At the end of the day, this show is somewhat of my business love letter to Atlanta, and all that we are doing right and some things that we're doing wrong. But you guys are located right across from Tech Square. Now, Tech Square has gone through an evolution since you've been there, and certainly since I've been in this city. But is that coincidence? Do you guys just like Midtown and you happen to be across from Georgia Tech, or is there a strategic reason why you're across from that campus?
I'd love to say the latter, but it's just dumb luck. It really is. And, in being in the Biltmore, since inception, we started 7 years ago on Candid Partners, and Matter just started last year. But since Candid started, I would say that there's 15 major skyscrapers that have gone up in about 5 blocks of us. So it's great to see happening. I'm loving that Midtown is becoming almost like a tech central place in Atlanta. It's really helped us.
It is pretty incredible. I lived in Midtown about 8 years ago, and would consistently pass by just vacant parking lot after vacant parking lot, and now it is unrecognizable in the best way possible. Okay, so you are you're now ReactorWorks the company, and Matter is the piece of technology.
That is correct.
Okay, so are you in the process where you are staffing up this new venture, or are you taking people who have kind of shown that they can transition roles from Candid Partners to ReactorWorks? Both?
Yeah, well, a little bit of both, to be honest. I mean, the original tech team came out of there, but we need to build a more extensive sales organization and a product development organization. Really, I should call them functions.
Yep.
And we need to expand those functions. And that is going to be the focus for the next 12 months.
Okay. So that is why you, of course, now you are extremely focused on that. Now, calling yourself the CEO of ReactorWorks as well.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. What else should we talk about? So, I'm interested as to how you get kind of classified as an official cloud partner, for platforms like AWS. Is there some sort, because obviously that is a pedigree that you use to go out and get more work from your current clients, get new clients. So is there an evaluation process? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, there's partner levels, and both on a consulting and product side. And so we've gone through that process. We're an advanced partner with AWS, and I don't remember the specific terms for the other platforms, but we're partners with all 3 major cloud platform providers. And honestly, we had invested pretty heavily in that about 2.5 years ago. So it basically endorses you in a certain level, but the way we're fairly unique as a company in that we do business development directly with very large enterprises, and we haven't found that the partner relationship is really driving sales for either companies. Really? Which is interesting, because they kind of pitch hey, you become a partner and you go through this kind of these different partner levels, and we're going to give you all these great opportunities. We're selling to very large enterprises, and that sales process is very complex, and it's a 9 to 12 month engagement before you really get a master services agreement and you get work. And frankly, we're more advanced in many ways than a lot of these cloud platform providers. So we don't take a partner-led approach. It is purely us doing business development of our companies.
So this actually reminds me of a point that we discussed when we first met a couple of months ago. We talked about recruiting, and you've already touched a little bit upon how you're tough. It is tough to get into the organization. You're looking for a very specific type of person. One of those qualities was someone who can be a consultant but also be technical at the same time. It can be complicated to find that extremely unique mix of person, and one, of course, who is comfortable kind of standing up and giving their own opinion to a multi-billion-dollar company, like you just said. So what is the process like for finding that fit so that you can go out and properly sell your services and know that you're delivering the best people for that client?
I mean, number one way is work your network. Have everyone in the company work their network. It's all like people that you know, absolutely. And I mean, sometimes we just could do direct recruiting. And some of the best people we found is just cold call recruiting. But I mean, the best way is the network. And then we take them through a very rigorous interview process. And then the other thing is we're very transparent about who, like, the people that are successful in our company and who aren't. Like, it's not helpful to bring somebody in that they last 6 months. And we're a team of 8 players. And I tell people straight up, it's funny, it's ironic. I had an interviewee earlier this week I said, you have to be an A player. You have to work hard. And, we have small teams of highly skilled people. So we have what I call a diamond-shaped staffing model, which is the person at the bottom of the diamond is the most junior person. They're probably like a really good 27, 28-year-old Georgia Tech grad that is an amazing coder, maybe a little bit weak on consulting. That's the weakest person on the team that we provide, on the teams we provide. And I tell them that. And I literally had a candidate this week that after I told him, I'm like, you're going to have to be an A player. You're going to have to be really good. You're going to have to learn really quickly because what we do, we're innovators. And we do things that no other company does on that level of innovation. He literally, in the interview, he backed out. Like, he's like, I don't think I'm prepared to do this. And I'm like, I really appreciate your honesty.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what I want to have.
That's what you're going for.
Yeah.
And frankly, good on that person for having the self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. So I scare them a little bit in the interview. But like, if they're confident, and that's one of the ways you kind of gauge somebody is suited for your company. Because like I said, there's a very specific profile of person that works well in our company. And if they work well, they love our company, as you've seen from Glassdoor.
Yeah. Yeah. So where are we? Where are we in the baseball game of cloud, right? If 2019 was the year that everyone started to hear about it, are we still in the first inning of this?
No. When it went mainstream, it's second inning.
Okay.
But, I had an interesting discussion with Gartner at reInvent, the AWS conference. And he said that just what's being spent right now is basically 10% of what ultimately is going to be spent, or going to be spent in about 5 years. So it's very, very early stage.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that obviously means a ton of opportunity. And it sounds like this is something that you've seen for a long time, and now it's kind of finally coming to, well, not necessarily coming to fruition because you have certainly been doing well, but the larger market in general is starting to take notice.
Oh, yeah. It's this is going to be one of those major transformations. It's like, it's like the advent of the internet almost. I mean, it's going to be let me put it this way. It's going to be once in a generation type transformation for enterprises from a technology standpoint.
And are you primarily working throughout the Southeast, or you guys are national?
Interesting question. We had been very Atlanta focused up until last year, and then we started getting Southeast, and now literally in the past couple months, we have opportunities nationally, and it's just interesting. It's really picking up.
Well, I mean, look, I think the way these things go, no matter whether you're talking about a business or whether you're talking about an individual salesperson within a business, you do the work, you put your head down for many years, and you get opportunities close to you, and then all the stuff you've put out there in the universe, whether it's whether you want to call it karma, luck, good work, whatever it is, it generally kind of seems to come from directions that you didn't know was going to come when you least expect it to.
Yeah, that's true. It's like you can be under the radar, and then just something in the industry pops, and it's the time is ripe now suddenly, and it's really popping.
Well, look, it's like you've done enough assignments, you know enough people, you have no idea what the conversations that those people are having with their networks in that you can't hear because you're not in the room, and things kind of they take on a life of their own, right? And eventually they kind of come back, and that's where you really see the fruits of your labor.
Yeah, it's good. And like I'm proud of the fact that we've been very consistent grower, the Candid partner side certainly over the last 7 years. And like one nice side note that we found out this week is we made Inc. 5000 for the 5th year in a row. We're one of 15 Georgia companies to ever have done that. So I love the fact that it's consistent, steady growth. But I do see that maybe in the next 12 months we'll maybe pop a little bit more rather than that kind of steady flat line kind of on a slope. Maybe we'll get a good bit of a spike. We'll see.
Well, I'm glad we got that on tape. Congratulations again.
Shameless plug.
That's what this is for, right?
All right.
So if someone is listening to this and they're wondering if your services can be of use, what would you tell them on what they should be looking for why they should call Candid Partners, ReactorWorks, Matter, all the above?
Honestly, if they're trying to do any kind of strategic program or enterprise level cloud initiative, that's what we do, both companies. And they're very complementary products. So you're going to need specialization from a services standpoint to be able to get there. And then, there's Matter is basically already established and proven existing software that provides that DevOps firewall so that on day one, when you start your cloud initiative, nobody's going to do anything dangerous that's going to cause like a breach that has a $100 million impact or similar like that. So, both those pieces are necessary for you to be successful.
Okay. And if they want to take the next step of getting in contact with you, how do they do that?
You can go to candidpartners.com and there's contact information on that site, or for Matter, it's matter.cloud.
Okay, fantastic. John, thanks a lot for coming by.
All right, thanks a lot, Joey.
Okay, Aleks, we are moving on. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. Enjoying. Never been to this part of Atlanta yet, so exciting.
So, Aleks is a newbie to the city. You've been here 3 weeks, is that right?
Just about 3 weeks, yeah. Coming up on, actually, I think 3 weeks and 2 days, maybe. So, yeah, still very new to the city.
Every new day is a special one in which you discover something new about the city, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love just kind of, I live in Midtown, so I love kind of walking up to Piedmont Park, going up and down the Belt Line, just discovering new things. So,
love it. Fun. Urban Explorer.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so we're going to talk about how you ended up in Atlanta, but first let's take a step back and we're going to talk about Smarp, okay, which is spelled, for everyone listening out there, S like Sam, M like Mary, A-R-P like Paul, if you want to Google it by chance. Okay, so, you can go on your website and, look at headlines that, have inside and outside communications from different employees. But can you really help us understand exactly what Smarp does in terms of both harnessing internal and external communications from an employee?
Sure, absolutely. So, essentially, we are a employee communications tool, and what we specialize in is, like you said, is this bridging of kind of the internal and external communications. And if you look at our headline on our website, it reads that reach every employee with relevant communications. So, the way we do that in our kind of philosophy to communication is, if you think about the way we communicate in our personal lives, it's changed. It's changed a lot. So whereas we used to have to go out and kind of look for information, now information tends to find us. If you think about any major newsworthy thing that happened in the last few years, most likely you didn't go out and find that information or that piece of news. Maybe your news app buzzed, maybe somebody messaged you on Facebook or whatever other communications channel you're using. So information really tends to find us. But that hasn't really translated to our professional lives just yet. We're still stuck in kind of using a lot of email. We're using a lot of intranets. I think a lot of companies are now starting to bring in chat, so tools like Slack and whatnot, that are helping kind of ease that pain. But we're still relying heavily on tools that were basically developed in the 70s, 80s, 90s to solve communications issues that are inherently modern and kind of pertain to how we communicate these days. So what we try to do is, instead of you having to go dig through your emails, you having to dig through your intranet or some kind of filing system for relevant pieces of content or learning materials or whatever, we bring that to you. So we basically try to make it so that you get the information you need to be successful at your job before you even know you need it.
And this is valuable to an organization because it lessens the friction of employees going to search for valuable information on their own. Right. I would imagine, you're working for a large Fortune 500, you're sitting there and you're wondering anything from where can I find information on benefits to where can I find information on leadership development programs within the company. Let's say you've been there for 3 months. You have no idea where to start and where to go.
Yeah, exactly. So on average, I can't remember the source of this research, but on average, the average knowledge worker spends about 2.5 hours a day searching for information. If you add that up, that's over a day a week, or that's about a week every month, and you start bleeding out valuable resources that people are spending on searching for information. So what we try to do is and we kind of, the way Smarp works is we take what we know about you as an employee. So, for example, your role, your department, your location, even the languages you speak, and we take what we know about the content. So, is it a blog? Is it a job opening? Is it the quarterly business results? Is it, a personnel update? And we feed all of that through Smarp and what comes out is just a feed of relevant information. So, you can easily, what we like to say is, at least for all of our employees and all the companies that use our tool, is like best practices to once you come into work in the morning, you kind of open Smarp, you have a fresh feed of all the relevant things that have happened in the last 24 hours or so, and you're instantly up to date. So that's really the principle.
Okay, so is the Smarp, okay, let's say that we're using this at JLL, okay? So as a broker, is the Smarp that I see when I open my computer every morning different than someone who's in accounting?
Yes, absolutely. So, and there's a few ways we do this. So typically when we start a new project with a client, what we can do is you're probably using some kind of user management tool, whether that's Active Directory, whether you're using Google or some other kind of system. We can plug into that, pull out all the information and all the attributes you have on your employees, and kind of feed them through Smarp and build like an intelligent distribution system. So the principle in which Smarp works is we have channels. So say we can have our marketing channel, we have our sales channel, but then we have our Helsinki of interest channel, or our Atlanta meeting recordings channel, or something like that. So we can take what we know about the employees and we feed them through we write a simple script for it that puts people into the correct channels. And then that, say, the meeting recording for our last strategy project, I put it into the strategy team channel, I put it into the meeting recordings channel, and then I know that everybody that needs to see that is going to see that piece of information.
Okay, so clearly it can be used for internal communication. What about external communication?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So basically the way, and maybe for a little bit of context here, the way Smarp initially took off was we operated in a space called employee advocacy. And what employee advocacy essentially means is you as a company, you're creating a lot of great content, but not enough people are seeing it. So why not use your employees to share it to their own networks? So say the marketing team comes out with a new blog or a video or something like that. Typically, depending on the company, of course, but your employees will have on average 10 times broader network on social than you as a company. So now, rather than sharing it, well, of course you should share it on your company channel. So say your corporate LinkedIn account that has, say, 10,000 followers, that's great. That's 10,000 eyeballs you might get on the content. But now you take your 10,000 employees, each of them has on average, 900 contacts. You can get, even if you only get like a third of those to share it, that's still a way broader reach. And that's essentially how we approach the idea of external communication. So still, even today, as we are more and more moving towards, internal and communications in general, I like to call it hybrid communications. We don't call it anywhere. We don't call it that on the site anywhere, but I like using that word. So, we still offer, and a lot of our customers still use us for employee advocacy. But the reason we started pivoting kind of towards the internal side was, it was a good story because we had this was 4 years back or so. We had a big enterprise client that was using Smarp solely for employee advocacy, and they were having a review meeting. So they had 500 seats or something on the platform, and they're going through the analytics and the users, and they wanted to of course get the max value out of the platform. So they noticed that there was a certain user that wasn't sharing anything. So they looked at him, and he had no activity that they could tell from the past 6 months or so. And they looked at this and they go, so this guy's just taking up a seat. Let's revoke his license. Let's bring in somebody new who might be more willing to share our content. So they did that. They kicked him out. They brought in somebody new. And the next day, the guy that got kicked out came back to their company admins and said that, hey, what happened to my Smarp account? I can't log in. And they go that, well, we were looking at the analytics and it didn't look like you were using it. You hadn't shared anything in 6 months. And you said that, well, yeah, I hadn't shared anything, but this was the only place I could go to stay up to date on what's happening in my company, in my industry. So at that point, it kind of clicked that, there's something bigger here at play. And now, even now when we're talking to our companies that, use us for both internal and external, it always starts from the awareness piece. So getting your employees to understand and view your content.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So this is kind of bringing together everything from marketing pieces, industry knowledge, directories, contacts, anything that anyone who works at, an organization of size, has some trouble with. One of the things that we discussed when we first met was institutional knowledge. And how when you have a company of, let's call it 10 or 15 people, you have original players, you have a lot of institutional knowledge that is housed within those people.
Sure.
And that stuff from the early stages of a company is really gold. As you have people leave or as your organization just grows bigger, the institutional knowledge either leaves the organization or it doesn't get codified for new people. And so, it sounds like the Smarp solution is trying to solve this issue amongst others.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, that was a good discussion we had because, and it's actually, if you think about it, I don't know what the exact, number, the number is probably different for each organization, but once you grow past a certain size, employee wise, I think, maybe 75, maybe 100, you start having people whose job it is to just know things. And now, because in the beginning, when you're 10, 15, 20 people, it's easy to have everybody kind of know a little bit of everything. Everybody's doing a little marketing, everybody's doing a little sales, everybody's, helping out in a lot of areas. But once you grow past a certain stage, you can't expect that from people anymore. So now that's when you really need a tool to help connect even individuals within the company with the correct people. So now I can give an example. Maybe I produce a lot of our sales enablement content for the company, and I share all that on Smarp. I make sure it's available. I put it into the sales channel, customer success channels, make sure all the relevant people see it. But now what happens is when a new person joins, they have all that information that, Aleks has been creating and sharing all this content and this information. I had a question from a prospect or an existing customer related to X. I should probably go talk to Aleks. So it's kind of bridging that gap. And another point you mentioned was when people leave the company, what happens to that knowledge? The good thing is, all of that kind of gets retained, and it's still, even if I were to leave the company, that information is still retained. Somebody can still find it and find all that information that I had produced in the past.
Absolutely. So Smarp is based in Finland.
Yep.
And, here, and of course all major cities do this, like to make a big deal out of when there is a, relocation or an additional office from another city placed in Atlanta. Yeah. Recently we've seen a lot of West Coast companies opening up regional offices here. It's a little bit rare that we see Finnish-based companies opening up offices here. And so, when I talked with you and Johanna, who runs the U.S.-based operation, it was God. I wish I could replay it. It was essentially a commercial for the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. It was it couldn't have been better if they'd written it themselves. But I'd like you to take everyone through kind of the process of one, deciding that you need an office in the U.S., and two, then deciding that Atlanta is that place.
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, the U.S. is our biggest market. We see the most traffic. We have most of our clients are here, and we just the opportunity really is here. And this is the place where people are starting to kind of recognize the challenge in communication and the shift in communication that I mentioned earlier, from kind of going from us finding information to information finding us. So we originally did have an office in New York City. this was years ago. Our CEO and a few other employees were out there. Obviously now New York is a fairly expensive place to be. So we were lucky enough to be in a situation where we could start kind of looking at, like, we didn't necessarily have to be in New York. At the end of the day, the benefits of being in New York kind of are outweighed by the cost of operating there. So we started looking at other options. And Atlanta was actually recommended to us from a few other Finnish companies. So there are a few other here, and then some of the CEOs of companies in our investors' portfolios. So famously, I think one of them said that so our CEO asked him that if you could do anything different, if you could go back and do anything different from when you guys expanded to the U.S. It was a company that had gone from Europe to the U.S. as well. If you could do anything different, what would it be? And he said that, I would take every employee we have in New York and I'd put them in Atlanta. So they now also have operations here, and they've just noticed that it's a great place to kind of springboard into the U.S. market. So recommendations were one. That was a big thing. Then, like I said, cost of living, quality of living is very good in the city. And that's big especially because we relocate a lot of people from Finland to Atlanta, myself included. Now, coming from Helsinki, or Finland in general, which is often considered, one of the best places to live, one of the happiest countries in the world, great quality of living. It wasn't a big leap coming to Atlanta. I am lucky enough to live in Midtown. Our office is also in Midtown, so it's a 15-minute walk. Like I said, there's all sorts of things to do. I like being in the city, so that was another big one. And then the third thing is available talent. So there are a bunch of great schools here. We're very close to Georgia Tech as well, so you have a lot of great grads, a lot of available talent in the city, and people tend to migrate out of Atlanta less. People like to be here, so the city is good at retaining that talent, and people tend to migrate into Atlanta as well. So that was another big thing. So the availability of talent was big for us.
Let's talk about that talent. So you're staffing up in this Atlanta office. Yep. What type of functions are you hiring for?
So mainly we are establishing a sales organization. So that's the first step. So sales, customer success, and customer development roles are going to be the first. That's the next running up until the end of this year. We hope to have that kind of the initial version of that staffed out. But then we're really looking to grow this office as well. I can't remember the exact dollar amount we were anticipating and investing. It was somewhere around $3 million in the next 5 years or something. So we really want to make the U.S. office one of our biggest, if not our biggest office. Helsinki is our headquarter. That's where most of our people are currently. But clearly the market and the kind of the drive is in the United States. So,
and any specific, look, obviously you have a backyard full of Fortune 1000 companies to sell to, but any specific types of industries that have been most successful for you in the past?
Yeah. So we tend to do really well with professional services companies. So you think accounting, legal services, stuff like this. We work with 3 of the big 4. We do well with tech. Amazon is one of our bigger customers. So just overall, typically companies that have a large amount of white collar and like knowledge intensive workers that need access to information and don't have a lot of time to spend looking for that information. These companies are also typically the ones that are producing a lot of information, whether it's, externally facing stuff like thought leadership content, blog posts, videos, whatever. And because they have so many employees, that's also when it brings in the external side. So it's like a great resource for them, not just for the communications, but also for, brand awareness as well.
Okay. So you just answered my second to last question, which is why should someone call you? So last question. if someone wants to get in touch, how do they do that?
Sure. So you can find us online, smarp.com. Of course, there's contact information there. You can find us on all the usual social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn, Alexander Cardwell. So, yeah, feel free to get in touch.
And again, that is SMARP, Smarp. All right. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
All right. Marshall, you've been sitting patiently. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. It's fascinating to hear all these stories, so I love it.
I tend to, I try and make it beneficial to be a bystander as well, listening to other people's stories. So
It's fascinating. It's like a front row seat on listening to the podcast, but I get to be here. It's
there you go, right? Best of both worlds.
Exactly.
So you and I met at a recent event put on by Atlanta Inno called 50 on Fire. Why were you there?
So I think Atlanta does a really good job of recognizing really exciting, growing, and unique companies. I think Atlanta Inno is a really amazing and newer publication that does that specifically in the tech sector. And this 50 on Fire event was, I'm not exactly sure how they did the competition, but it was recognizing just 50 really amazing, outstanding Atlanta companies.
Well, yes. Okay. So for those who missed it, he was being modest by not specifically saying that Vestigo was being honored there.
Well, that's just a small part.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was the part I was getting at there. Okay. So you've been recognized by the Atlanta Inno organization, and they had different categories there. Okay, and you've got a little bit of a non-traditional business, certainly rooted in kind of team building and consulting. But tell me a little bit more about what Vestigo does.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say it's a non-traditional approach to a problem that almost every company has. But
Okay,
definitely,
well said.
Definitely different in terms of our take on it. So my background is in public health. I graduated from the University of Georgia when I go to med school. Realized that medicine wasn't exactly the route for me, but I was really passionate about helping people live a more active and healthy lifestyle. And my campus job at the time was actually as a guide for the outdoor rec program, where we'd guide students on all kinds of really amazing outdoor experiences for the first time. And I got to see this firsthand effect that outdoor experiences, outdoor recreation had on individuals, especially from a public health standpoint. And I wanted to create a way to make those experiences more accessible. So when we first originally got started, we were a bit different from what we are now, but we built Airbnb experiences before Airbnb experiences built it. It's sort of the best way to describe it now that everyone knows what that is. So that came out about 2 years after we got started. And of course, we didn't want to compete with Airbnb. And it was a bit difficult for a first-time founder to build a B2C platform company. And if anyone doesn't know what Airbnb experiences we were creating ways to access local guides for any kind of outdoor recreation specific experience. So you could find a kayaking guide, a climbing guide, or even someone just take you on a hike. So from there, we pivoted a little bit away from the B2C side, started working with companies to use those experiences to create a more impactful type of team and culture building activity that actually got to the core root of what creates a powerful human connection between individuals. It's not sitting next to someone at a Braves game and having a surface level conversation you might have in the office at lunch. It's actually getting in a new environment that's challenging, that's different, and overcoming that environment that might be something that's a bit intimidating together with your peers, and admitting about the fact that it is maybe a little scary, it's a little tough. So we started using all these kinds of really amazing outdoor recreation experiences for team and culture building, and have since then expanded far past the actual experience to really create this cultural innovation building program for companies, where we'll have both the outdoor experience that factors into their goals and values as a company, but also will come into the office and have these really amazing both outdoor adventure experts and leadership development facilitators talk through how the actual experience made an impact in their ability to give a pitch in front of the CEO in the boardroom, which might also be extremely scary, to tackle some type of intimidating environment in the office and better overcome those perceived limits.
Okay, so the visual I have is like Tony Robbins in the woods. All right. So how far off am I? It's got
not too far off. Actually,
really?
Sort of that applied to company culture with the goal of making your company employees more innovative and creative.
Okay, well, so I think when a lot of people might think of a team building exercise, they think of something cheesy like a trust fall, or like a super easy low ropes course. Okay, so how do you go in and specifically get to know a culture and design a program for that culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our trust falls are 100-foot rappels off cliffs and things like that. A little bit different from the typical trust fall. But you're right. The first step is very specific to the companies we work with. So every company has that base need to create a culture of innovation and to empower people to constantly have the mindset of challenging themselves, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's the culture that innovative products and innovative processes will come out of. So that's kind of the base layer of everything that we do in all experiences. But of course, every company has their own goals, their own core values. And we try to use the experience as a way to emphasize those goals or values. So the first step is we really dive into what are your core values as a company? What are some of the big problems that you have, some of the big opportunities that are coming up? And then we take that knowledge that we gain from those first initial discovery meetings, and we create a series of experiences that best emphasize those goals and values from a physical experiential standpoint, where we actually make very powerful analogies between the actual experience and those goals themselves. So like, for instance, to give you an example, one of the experiences we do is a intro whitewater kayaking experience on the Metro Hooch. So it's right at the intersection of 75 and 85, not too far away. You can get there. Most Atlantic companies can get there in 20 minutes. And that's actually the section of water that the 1996 Olympic paddlers trained on for the Olympics. Oh. Nothing crazy. There's no waterfalls there, but it's enough to practice the fundamentals of whitewater kayaking. And we'll put people in two-person inflatable kayaks where they have to work together as a team to navigate the changing environment. So, of course, if their core value or one of their goals was, for instance, don't be afraid of change or seek out change. Then, of course, the river and the current is always moving and changing in different ways. And we'll teach people how to navigate that change and use that to their advantage. So, for instance, in whitewater kayaking, there might be a rock in front of you, and that rock might look like an obstacle. But in reality, at the back end of the rock, it blocks the flow and is a nice, calm pool of water that you can actually get to and use as an opportunity to reset and tackle the flow from a new perspective, from a new angle. So we'll make all these analogies between the experience and the actual goal we want to emphasize so that it really sticks in people's heads and they can actually practice that with someone else.
Okay, so that is a very specific Atlanta example. And obviously right now, as a young company, I'm sure you're taking advantage of a lot of opportunities in your own backyard of Atlanta. It sort of relies on, someone being there to present this, right? This is not really a virtual capability, although I know I do want to talk about virtual reality with you, okay? So as you grow outside of Atlanta, how do you still kind of keep that human touch? Is it you've got to have bodies on the ground in any market? You got to have people who really know those sort of activities. How do you do that outside of the Metro Atlanta area?
That's a really great question. So there's sort of two parts to that answer. We as much as we do love using technology to accomplish this as well, like I was going to talk about virtual reality probably when you asked that question. Yeah. That's definitely a component. But as much as we want to be a tech company, we also understand the value of just real in-person experiences. I was just watching Ready Player One the other day, and one of the big quotes at the end was that nothing beats reality because reality is real. And there's so many tech companies that are an online platform that sort of take the human element out of it. We never want to lose that. So one of the core pieces of what we're doing is that there are so many amazing experiences within driving distance of practically every city in America and across the world. We can always leverage those local experiences to create these really powerful local experiences using local guides that are in the area. And of course, we really make a lot of effort to make sure that the guides who are leading our experiences are trained just as much in the facilitation and the leadership development training side of things as they are in the outdoor recreation side. But there's always going to be amazing people locally that know those spots, know how to facilitate those experiences, and can make sure that the in-person experiences are still really powerful. But then, of course, we also are factoring in a lot of ways we can use technology to have experiences that anyone can participate in, regardless of whether your employees are in Atlanta or not. So, for instance, you could take part of your team from Helsinki and the team here in Atlanta and actually both do something together virtually through some virtual reality experiences, which is really a fascinating time to start doing that now, because if anyone follows virtual reality who's listening, Facebook owns Oculus. Oculus just released the Oculus Quest, which is the first mobile headset that allows you to move around in three-dimensional space without being tethered to a computer. and having pretty impressive quality graphics. So now people can actually put the headset on and interact with other people that are maybe somewhere across the room or across the world and feel like they're actually there. So we can create an experience where maybe you're tightrope walking across the Grand Canyon and it sort of feels like you're actually there. Of course, it's not as powerful as actually doing something, but it's convincing enough to the brain to actually release the same neurotransmitters, same neurochemicals in environment that actually gives you the effect that you would when you were rappelling off a cliff for the first time.
So when you meet with like you have described some very serious, intense activities, okay? And I can imagine a group of people in, let's say you're a large company, you're dealing with the marketing department, okay? I can imagine half the people who would say, hell yeah, let's do this. And I can imagine, there'd be maybe 20% of people that say, I'm really not comfortable with this whatsoever. But obviously you want everyone to bond. You want everyone, the whole point is that it's not a clique of people, right? Everyone is getting to know each other. How do you bridge that gap between doing something intense and powerful, but also, keeping people's comfort levels in thought?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You have to have psychologically for what we do to really make a difference, because of course we're training people to be comfortable with navigating unknown and unique environments, comfortable with change essentially. And a lot of people are not comfortable with change or comfortable getting outside of their comfort zone. And that's okay. We want to try to create environments that allow everyone to progress at their own level. So the virtual reality is actually a really great way for someone that maybe, of course, we have a range of different intensities in terms of the experiences we do. Whitewater kayaking could be more in the middle, but something as simple as, a mile hike is very accessible. Even if someone doesn't necessarily want to sign up for a physical experience, the virtual reality experiences can be a really great way to get started. They don't necessarily even have to be, adventure related. Of course, there's a lot of research in terms of why adventure sports actually are the most effective, efficient, and fastest way to get to the headspace you need to have those types of kind of revelations that allow you to be more innovative and creative. But something as simple as like one of our virtual reality experiences is two teams working together to defuse this bomb in a time limit, and the bomb is obviously a virtual bomb. So the person that's in the virtual reality headset has to describe, okay, there's a blue wire and a green wire and a red wire, and then the other group has to say, okay, well, based on the configurations of those wires, you cut this one. If you do the wrong thing, you lose, and it's a lot of teamwork, but because there's intense, James Bond music in the background and the timer's counting down, it makes you have the same kind of emotional response as something that might be adventure related, even though it has nothing to do with outdoor adventure. So it's more of the mindset of practicing getting outside of your comfort zone. That's important.
When I hear you talk about this, I hear a lot of organizational psychology coming through. Now, it's not like you have a PhD in organizational psychology, but clearly
a major in it.
Well, okay. So I was going to say, clearly you are well versed in it and take a lot of those lessons into the core of the company.
Absolutely, we do.
Okay, so one other thing that I think is very exciting is you guys have a podcast.
We do, yeah. I always love coming out of the podcast because I think it's fascinating to see how other people do it. Yeah, we host a podcast called Inside the Adventure where we interview a lot of the people who've actually since then helped come and actually facilitate some of our experiences. But we'll interview anyone who's done something really remarkable in the outdoor adventure travel space. They could be someone who's founded an outdoor company. So we have actually a lot of really amazing business leaders like the founder of Osprey, the VP of Patagonia have come on our show. But then we also have amazing athletes such as the 1996 Olympic gold medalist for whitewater paddling. Joe Jacoby was our very first guest. He actually leads that section, the segment that we do on the Metro Hooch, and all of these amazing people that specifically talk about how they had to have a particular mindset to accomplish these amazing goals that they had. And those mindsets are actually what we're trying to help to instill in the companies we work with. So there's a big connection between the podcast and our content, what we do on the experience, where we'll actually have people listen to particular podcast episodes to hear the stories of particular people that are relevant to the activity we're about to do. And then some of those podcast guests will actually come help us facilitate those experiences.
That is very cool. All right. So, and I can vouch for this. I've listened to the podcast and these people are just as badass as you could ever imagine.
They're amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So it is called Inside the Adventure. Anyone listening to this, once you're done listening to our show, you go to your podcast app and type in Inside the Adventure. You guys have a ton of episodes, like 75 or something?
Yeah. So we did 75 for season 1, and we're actually launching season 2 in 2 weeks, I believe, from now.
Have you found it, so you've used it as sort of a, I guess, training or preparation mechanism for those who are going to use Vestigo services. Have you found it helpful from a marketing perspective?
It's been okay from a marketing perspective. I think the real benefit has been a really amazing way to just get in touch with really incredible people that I selfishly just really want to have a conversation with.
Yeah.
Of course, personally, I love anything to do with outdoor recreation sports. And these are the leading people in every single sport that you'd ever hear of, anything from ski base jumping to something more conventional like scuba diving or mountain biking. There's the leaders in all these incredible sports that are really pushing it to the limits, and I personally just love having these amazing conversations. But we use it really strategically as a way to kind of have that really inspirational content that we can deliver before and after our experiences, so that the people that are coming on our experiences before they come on them can actually get in the right mindset, and then afterwards can use their experience to relate to what the guest is actually saying on the episode. But in terms of a marketing perspective, it's been decent, not super great, but of course wasn't really our initial aim with it. But
it'd be a nice little externality if it was. But
exactly.
Are you primarily when you're selling your services, are you primarily going into a company through HR?
We usually actually start a little bit higher up. So because the main focus of what we do is based around creating a culture of innovation, that innovation is the real key piece. Of course, we definitely will work with HR and the chief people officer, whose job is culture. But when it comes to the innovation component, a lot of the feedback we've gotten from the COO or the CEO or the leadership of a company is that finding ways to make their employees more innovative, more willing to get outside their comfort zone, try something new, in the hopes that it will help differentiate them and set them apart from the old way of thinking about things. That's kind of the main problem that we hear from higher up. So we try to work initially with the CEO or the COO, and then have HR kind of be our partner in facilitating it. But a lot of times if we start directly with HR, then sort of the goal of what we do to get people outside of their comfort zone using experiences like this sometimes scares HR away if we just start there.
Yeah.
But it depends.
I could see that. Okay, so C-suite executives, if you're listening and you want your employees to have a great team building experience that lasts, Marshall, how can they get a hold of you at Vestigo?
Yeah, if you just Google Vestigo, Vestigo, you'll find us. Vestigo.co is our URL. You can always reach out to us on LinkedIn, Mosher on LinkedIn, or Instagram or Facebook. Send us a carrier pigeon, whatever works best.
Great. All right, guys. To everyone who joined, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.